With the board reorganization, we're gonna change that to a later time. So we'll go right into the previous minutes. If there's no issues with that, entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Who's made the motion? Devin? Is she here? McCool's made a motion to approve the previous minutes. I'm doing a roll.
Aye.
McCool?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay, next is the policies. The first read, we have the board commitment, alcohol and drug, pets, fiscal management, student freedom. Do you need a motion for those? Accept those? Okay. If there's no discussion on those, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Devin's made a motion. Sarah?
Aye.
Kua?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. There's nothing under second read. And then the other ones are just informational. They're procedures for handling complaints and discriminations. Okay. Next is recognition of visitors. I don't see no visitors.
No, none is in
Okay, we'll go right into the school spotlight. Beth?
Well, I have a video, but I'll just give a little preface and then I'll answer any questions afterwards. So we had a new industrial arts pre-tech teacher this past year. His name is Lee Miller. And during one of our conversations last year, he talked about in his previous school that it had been a Project Lead the Way school, and I put a little bit about this in the September board notes. I started to look into it, and the mission of Project Lead the Way is to create a transformative learning environment and empower students to develop in-demand knowledge and skills necessary to thrive in an evolving world. And the Project Lead the Way, it's PLTW, has strands of courses. And they have computer science strand, they have an engineering strand, and they have like a biomedical strand. And I started to look into it this year, and Lee connected me with one of their representatives. And the courses can actually start in middle school. And they're giving essential skills for a career. So I wrote a grant, we talked a lot about it, and I did this at the end of July, beginning of August, and we received 2 grants in 2 of the strands. So one was in computer science for $14,000, it's a 2-year grant, and one for engineering, which is $16,000, which is also a 2-year grant. And it includes the curricula and the professional learning for the teachers for 2 years. So we do one class 1 year, and I like this, that it starts slowly. And so we're teaching one cohort of kids this year, and then we're adding on a class for next year. So for this year, we did intro to computer science, and next year, I think we're gonna add on cybersecurity. There's a couple of choices. I think animation was another one. Or maybe it's game design, one of those. We haven't decided which class we're adding on. And the other is engineering, and I think we're thinking about electronics for next year. So this video, contains teachers and students talking about the Project Lead the Way initiative.
So Project Lead the Way is like a set of curriculum that the school has invested in that is basically a whole process of different engineering classes and programs. It can start in 8th grade all the way up to the end of 12th grade. We are teaching Introduction to Engineering and Computer Science right now. And the class that I'm teaching is Introduction to Engineering. And it's basically like an overview, a beginning view of engineering classes. and it's the beginning class that can lead to other classes that are higher level, like digital electronics, principles engineering. There's even an aerospace class, and the computer science class, of course. And it's just a way to prepare students to be ready for engineering.
I'm Mr. Greenwood, and what I'm teaching is Intro to Computer Science. So what that is we're using a program called Project Lead the Way. It's a program that helps assist us in developing curriculum for students. It is self-paced, and we have 4 units. The first unit is on MIT Code App Inventor, which is block-based programming. The second one is VEX, which is half block-based, half written code, which would be like Python or Java, and the rest of the year is just in written code, which is Python and Java. And what this helps students do is helps them build strong foundational skills, not only for using computers and trying to troubleshoot apps or anything like that, but if any of them are interested in going into a career in cybersecurity or video game design, or just finance, these programs will help them. And what the students do is they have a couple of different tracks. The first track they all start on is Computer Science Essentials, and that's a year-long course. And then after that, they got Computer Science Principles, Computer Science A, and from there they can either choose cybersecurity or video game design, depending on what route they want to go on to. And once they've finished doing those routes, they can then get college credit for it, which will help them get their degree faster.
So in this class, we're learning on how to build apps and design the apps using blocks coding, and so we design we follow steps in it, and we learn how to create our own codes to get the apps to do what we want. Right now, we're going to be using the MIT App Inventor, but soon we're going to start using Python. And right now I'm designing my own game where a raccoon is trying to get to the trash can before the trash man gets to him, so I have to design how my raccoon moves around the screen and all the different codes to get the trash man to move and stuff like that.
So when I first started this class, I looked at it and I was like, bro, there's no way I can do this. But now, a couple weeks in, I'm doing pretty good, and I've already made 2 or 3 apps. And right now I'm working on a guessing game for the class. Going pretty well, I think.
I'm taking this class because it involves coding, and when I graduate from college, I'm going to be a game developer. So this is going to help me with the skills of learning how to build apps and test code to make sure it works.
So it's the beginning of the year. We just started with the design process, which is brainstorming, coming up with ideas, prototyping, redoing the prototypes, making products and stuff like that.
One of our projects for this class was to design a carnival game with a board about this big, and we had to have a launcher of some kind and a 1 in 20 chance of winning the game. So we all came up with different concepts, me and my team, who are here and over there somewhere. And this is a concept I came up with personally, which was sort of like shuffleboarding. There's a launcher on a rail that you have to line up to shoot. There's a beanbag through a very, very narrow hole, this beanbag. So the idea is you have to line it up perfectly for it to go through, which is what makes it hard, because it gets reset after every time you go. And there were a couple other concepts, but we did a decision matrix to decide which one we would do. A decision matrix being we put all of the concepts in a sort of spreadsheet and ranked them all on a couple different categories, and then tallied up all their points from the rankings, and this had the most points. So it's not done. They're working on resketching the concept for the launcher over there, but I added the resin on the board as an idea to just make it a bit slicker so the beanbag could slide better.
So looking beyond high school, a cool thing about PLTW is they have these end of course exams, or end of curriculum, end of course exams, and what that allows you to do, and with the class, with a passing grade in a class and a good grade on this end of course exam, you can actually get college credit from certain institutions, and most of those institutions, as far as I know, you can actually transfer to other institutions. Like, so it'd be like getting credit at like a community college and then getting a transferable credit straight into college. So you're getting college credit, much like an AP exam or something like that. So, and it's helpful for introduction to engineering courses and stuff like that at the college level.
The main reason I want to be in this class is to learn manufacturing skills and skills related to engineering, because that is a useful skill that is for many job opportunities.
It's awesome, Beth. There's so many connections to the Portrait of a Learner work and like preparation for what comes after this. Love the self-pacing part of it.
And even if you don't go to college, I think that the skills are transferable directly to career.
Yeah.
The boy who goes, bro, I can't do this. I played his game the other day, and he beat me badly, but you had to like touch the faces, and the faces were Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hoyt, and so he was thinking about changing his game a little, that you get more points if you hit Mr. Hoyt's, and then the second amount for Mr. Greenwood's and the least amount for his own. And so they're really thinking critically about the games, and they're having a lot of fun, a lot of engagement in both of these classes.
Okay, that was nice, Beth, thank you. Okay, for the financial report, Morgan?
All right, so the first thing that I have is around the VHI annual meeting. We did this for the VISBIT meeting last month, and you gave ACUA your proxy to vote on your behalf at the VISBIT meeting at the end of October. End of October?
Mm-hmm.
It's coming up soon.
Coming up.
Yeah, a couple weeks. We now have the VHI proxies as well. VHI is the health insurance cooperative that we belong to. Their meeting is that same morning. And assuming that you would like to give ACUA your proxy to vote at that meeting as well, the motion would be to appoint ACUA Smith as authorized representative to appear and vote on behalf of the board at any and all meetings of the members of the Vermont Education Health Initiative or any adjournment thereof.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Sarah's made the motion. Devin?
Aye.
Akua?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
Morgan, can you send me the times to?
Sure can.
It's early.
Oh, really?
One's at 8, one's at 8:15.
Okay, that's not bad.
It feels early when you're there.
Give me a moment. Share the screen. That's exciting. Okay. So I believe for the four of you here, this will be similar to last year. But I'll kind of bring you through this slideshow at each meeting for the next couple of meetings. Tonight, we're really only going to go as far as talking about some of the big elevation staffing changes that we've begun to discuss. So I've had meetings with all your principals and with Lynn, and I'm trying to tip you to where we think we're going in terms of proposed staffing changes. As we've talked about a lot, and we'll talk about a little bit later tonight, with the change in weights, we're anticipating a lot more budget capacity for the same tax rate for both Enosburg-Richford and NNV. And so realize that we may be bringing a lot of things, a lot of programmatic changes, increases to you, and we will have an opportunity later on in the budgeting season if we need to adjust that. But we kind of want to get the wish list out there for you right up front. So quick recap of the schedule. We will have board meetings on November 7th and December 12th. We will get into more details. November 7th, I will put some dollar amounts to the staffing changes that we talk about tonight, and then at your December meeting, we'll start pulling in some budget items for the non-personnel costs. And then the hope is that we'll be able to finalize your budget at your January 9th meeting. We can go an extra week or two after that and still meet our meeting warning requirements. But in a normal year, at least by that point, we don't have a lot more new information that will be coming to us at that point. Similar to past years, we will get the proposed yield amount on December 1st from the tax commissioner. That's one of the 4 numbers that sets your residential tax rate. And then we'll get a first look at your long-term ADM, which is the new version of Equalized Peoples, by December 15th. So unfortunately, that'll be right after your 3rd board meeting, but we'll have that in time for your January meeting. And then the week between Christmas and New Year's is when the tax department usually drops the CLA figures. At your in-person annual meeting, you elect a moderator and a clerk. You also will elect a treasurer at yours. We had some discussions after the last annual meeting about whether that format still made sense. We had it at Enosburg High School last year. We had 2 people who are not associated with the school show up for that. As it stands now, that is a requirement, and the time and the date are specifically laid out. If you were to move to elect your moderator, clerk, and treasurer and any other business by Australian ballot on town meeting day, and get rid of that in-person annual meeting, you would still be required to hold an informational meeting 10 days prior, but you'd have a lot more flexibility in where and when you did it. And I think it's a little bit easier to have multiple meetings if you decide to. Not that there's a push for that with only 2 people showing up. So I wanted to tip that conversation. We had it last in April after we gathered after the last annual meeting. There would be a few steps we need to take and articles we'd have to put on your official ballot this year to basically give the voters permission to determine how they want that annual meeting to roll. There are 3 school board seats that are up this year because of some of the midterm retirements that you have. Sarah's seat is up. Elijah's seat is up normally, and then whoever takes Shelley's seat will have to run again, and just to get the last 1 year of that 3-year term. But you will have 3 seats out of 6 up in this election. And I will communicate with folks at a later meeting about the deadlines for gathering signatures. It's usually around January 26th. That's tied to town meeting date, so we'll get the exact date for you in the future. We started the budget discussion last year, first with those board goals. Those goals haven't changed. We did add a 4th budget goal last year around really looking at the differences in opportunities between the 2 high schools. We can certainly add that back, and if there are other goals that you want us to be approaching the budget process with, we're certainly all ears on that. I think Lynn may be talking about enrollment numbers in her presentation as well, but this chart shows the last 5 years of October 1 enrollment, so 2019 through 2023, and then projects out based on the history that we've seen where those school populations are going. I won't go into detail since Lynn is going into this, but a couple of points I want to bring to your attention is 2020 was the first year of COVID, so we know that we lost a lot of kids, especially in those pre-K ranges. There, you start to see the numbers climb back. From 2022 to 2023, we saw increases at the 2 Enosburg schools, Enosburg High School in Enosburg Elementary, and then noticeable but smaller decreases at the two Richford schools, so Richford Elementary, and then Richford Elementary, and then Richford High School. And then we'll be going into more depth on those numbers there. We then kind of put on the table some additional budget considerations. Several of these are rolled over from last year, and unfortunately several of them are probably going to continue to roll over from year to year. So seeing more kids with social emotional needs than in the past. This will be the first year that we get to use the revised pupil weights under Act 127. So again, that is going to be a big help for our two districts. COVID money is going to expire by September of 2024. So this is the first budget in which we're really looking at those remaining positions and those remaining programs that are being paid at ESSER this year, and needing to make a decision if we're going to pull them into a local budget or if we're going to let them go.
Do you know how many people that is for the ESSER?
I do. It's I'll go over it a little bit later. It's 14 across the SU. Some of those are fractional positions, and we'll start to show you the ones that I think are most obvious to move into the local budget on the ER side, and then we still have some conversations at the SU level about the positions that are not tied to a specific school and what we want to do with those. In terms of PCB remediation, we've got results that are still out there, some that haven't even been sampled yet, so we're keeping an eye on that in terms of what those likely costs are going to be. The grant for the first round of PCB funding has just opened up. We're kind of waiting on instructions on how to access that, but I know that we will be going after some of that money already for Berkshire, and there's a long list of people, probably much longer than the money is available.
I have had the opportunity, just a little more on PCBs, to speak with colleagues who are a little further along that path in terms of trying to figure out how, what kind of money is going to be able to be available for them in terms of dealing with the PCBs. And a lot of it's focused on the remediation piece, not necessarily what you're going to do to be able to rebuild after you take it out. So it is leaving schools in a place where there is an enormous hole to fill in terms of funding the true cost of the PCB situation. I'm suspecting you're hearing the same thing from business managers.
Kind of a concrete example of that is one of the products that we're hearing is PCB containing in other schools is the caulking around windows. So the remediation will pay to pull the windows out and dispose of them, but the remediation is not going to pay to put a new window back in. Mm-hmm. And so even to the extent that there is remediation money, which I think is still a live question out there, there are going to be pretty significant costs to some districts across the state.
Yeah. I was on a call and I heard them talking about essentially that they were going to have to write it into budgets going forward.
Yep.
Which is also problematic because in tandem, we're trying to figure out the significant needs associated with deferred maintenance in schools across the state, because there's been no capital money set aside for school construction projects.
Right.
So at the same time that people are contending with that, they're having to figure out how to contend with the capital projects that are decades beyond when we should have let them go. So we're in a pretty big dilemma as a state about how we're going to fund those things.
Yeah.
So we're hoping there's some signaling that there's some strategy and some conversations that are going to happen around school construction aid, but obviously there's a long path ahead of any action on that.
Mm-hmm. And then to recap what's going on in this district, Richford Elementary has gone through the testing, finally got results, and there's no remediation needed there. Enosburg Elementary has gone through the testing, and those results, I believe, will be announced soon. Cold Hollow is likely to be next on the list. We're trying to move that up because of the building project that we're trying to get off the ground there. and we don't want to put a lot of money into a building and then find out that it's got PCBs and the foundation or whatever. And then the 2 high schools are somewhere on the list, but.
Well, they sent me information saying we were, this past summer, and I did send a letter out to families, but they haven't come yet.
So the timeline really has no meaning anymore, like the original timeline. It has schools that we thought were way down the road, all of a sudden they were like there to do testing and we didn't even really know it was coming. And then schools that we thought were happening over a year ago, we still haven't seen testing. So it feels a little like it's a dart on a big board as to when they're gonna show up.
And one of the things that I think, one of the reasons that a cynical person might think is that when the legislature was discussing putting a pause on this, we saw a lot more activity from the contractors who were hired to do this work. And so they were kind of suddenly trying to push things through the schedule. And then the legislature decided not to pause it. And so once that happened, that push from some of those contractors seems to have backed off. Health insurance premium increases, I assume they're going to be low double digits again, and I don't see that changing in the next few years, given that personnel is such a huge piece of the pie for your budget. That 10% health insurance is usually a big hit. And then good news for you is that NMV, the 4 NMV schools have a relatively large 8th grade class and a relatively small senior class. And so they're going to be sending more tuition kids somewhere. And between your 2 high schools, you get the lion's share of those in a normal year. And that was sad news for them last week. So in terms of staffing changes, I'll say, just as a broad caveat, this will all change. I think especially the paraeducator numbers are a little bit squishy because kids are moving in and out and needs are getting identified. And with our alternative programs up and running now, there's also, I'd say, more movement from in district, but technically out of district, and the buildings. And so those numbers could go up or down for any of the individual schools. But based on conversations with the principal and conversations with Lynn, kind of the first tip to you all around some of the bigger staffing changes is at Enosburg Elementary, proposing a full-time instructional coach, and then maybe a marginal reduction to number of paraeducators. At Enosburg High School, proposing a full-time art teacher, and again, at this point in the year, looking at fewer paraeducators. At Richford Elementary, moving a half-time of Lord McGraw into your local budget out of Esser. She's one of the 14 there, although she's only paid a half-time out of that, and you already have her half-time in your local budget. Increasing the art position to 0.6, which is really catching up to what's going on in the building. You had shared that position with Enosburg Elementary, and Enosburg Elementary last year went to a larger FTE of art, and that staff member moved to that building.
Would it make it full-time?
It would make it full-time,
Okay.
yes. An increase in paraeducators, again at this moment, and then moving the family engagement coordinator, which is currently fully out of ESSER, into the local budget. And I say fully out of ESSER, some of these positions we can run until September. So if we're in a position where the board is saying, yeah, we do want to keep these positions going forward, but we need to find a few dollars here and there, we can look at whether the ESSER grant will be able to carry in for the extra 3 months of next year.
That might be beneficial for us for another reason too, because we would like to be able to spend out the ESSER money that's on the table for us.
At Richford High School, similarly, family engagement coordinator position, which is now coupled with a health teacher, and so pulling that part out of ESSER into the local budget. Sort of catching up budget to budget, there was an extra .25 teacher somewhere in the science and ag science, and I understand it when Beth's right in front of me explaining it to me. As soon as my key hits the ignition, I'm lost on that, but it's related to the science teacher hire and then keeping a little bit of the ag science in a fractional FTE. And then the addition of an additional paraeducator specific for a planning room position, second planning room position. And then in Cold Hall at this point, no changes in their FTE. They've got an opening that they haven't been able to fill, but we would leave that in the budget. And that's a position that's in theory shared with the 2 high schools as well.
What's the total on that, like 7 for FTE?
I haven't actually done that yet. 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, it's about 5.5 teachers, and then again the paraeducators. It's looks like it's maybe up 1, but those numbers will change.
Right. And that would take care of all the ESSER people we think?
I will take care of all the ESSER people that are
So
tied
local?
specifically to your building.
Okay.
So we have part of an SEL coordinator that serves all schools, the director of the advancement of educational equity, full-time position, but over all schools, the 3 instructional coaches. So I think you've got a piece of each of them in some of your schools. They're going to split by grade. And then there's a chunk of the FPA teachers and the principal, which all the schools have some kids that are going there, but those teachers aren't tied to a specific building. And I'm going to blow through some of these slides. I just want to bring you to the projected tax rates, because I think it's good for you to see this as often as possible, and on the off chance that people are watching this in Northwest Access, to see it each month as well. So right now I'm only showing you the budget year that we're in right now. Again, this $21.5 million figure is the amount of money that the voters approved for you to spend for this year. The $4.6 million is the amount of money that we think we are raising outside of the state education fund. So that's primarily tuition payments to the 2 high schools from sending towns like NMV. There's also some categorical grants in there and a lot of tech center specific grants in there. The difference is your education spending amount, and so this is the amount of money that you need to get from the state ed fund. That number is divided by this year, what was your equalized pupil count, which ended at just over 922, and that gives you an ed spending per pupil of $18,159. And this number is really only relevant for setting tax rates because you don't have 922.33 kids in your school, and this funding doesn't really capture all of the grant funding that's spent. But your ed spending per pupil figure of $18,159 is then divided by that dollar yield figure, which the tax commissioner sets in December, and the legislature approves in June usually. And that gives you your educational equalized residential school tax rate. So this is the rate that people see on their tax bills for their homes before they see the impact of the CLA. And I'm showing you last year's numbers just because I wanted to show you this year's numbers. When we move from equalized pupil to this long-term weighted ADM, you're actually picking up almost 700 kids. Everybody in the state is probably picking up kids because of the way that the math is changing behind the number, but because of those weights putting greater impact on things like poverty and on sparsity, you're seeing a much bigger benefit than a lot of places in the state. And so what that will do is that's going to drive this ed spending per pupil number way down. And so it's gonna look like you're spending a lot less per pupil. Your budget could be exactly the same. The kids who are actually in your building are exactly the same, but this number tends to tank. Because of that, the dollar yield is also gonna drop pretty significantly. And that will have the effect of kind of bringing that tax rate up for everyone. We still think that you're gonna see a huge benefit, and I think we shared the numbers at the last meeting. It was probably, only using last year's numbers, an extra $1 or $1.5 million that you could spend from the same tax rate. The thing that's different this year is that, you know, we will get a number that looks somewhat like this 9,600 on December 1st, but I don't know that there's anybody in the state who's gonna have a lot of faith in that, because we are all going through this initial budget process without any benefit of that history. And so the agency's gonna come to one of my meetings in November and say, okay, how much more are you spending this year over last year? We're gonna say, oh, I think it's up 5%, it's up 10%, we're gonna be flat. But a lot of districts are gonna be making those predictions without really having any idea what it's gonna do to the tax rate. And so if you're in a district that's losing tax capacity, you might say, well, health insurance is up 10%, our salaries are up 10%, our budget's going up 10%. And then you get the tax bill and you say, well, we're not gonna bring our tax bill up 50 cents. And so they're gonna drop it down. Likewise, you might have districts that budget very conservatively, and they go through the calculation and they see that, you know, their tax rate has fallen through the floor, and they're now gonna go back and say, well, we've always wanted, you know, full-time music at each of our elementary schools or something like that. And so that number could go up. And so, you know, we will have some predictions for your December meeting, but they're certainly not gonna be very bankable.
I think the one thing to keep remembering about this is the intention behind this kind of a shift around funding was to provide more equitable opportunities for students who live in communities like ours. So I hear Beth with the spotlight that she shared earlier, and she was able to bring that program to Richford because she went out and wrote 2 grants to be able to afford to do that. And that those are programs that are tremendously impactful for students and really huge assets for our learning communities. But given, you know, the population of the students that we serve and the communities that we serve, it's been very difficult to generate enough money in our budget to be able to afford some of those things that in the past have been considered extras for us, but kind of the norm in other schools with more tax capacity. So that's the intention behind this, is to give us greater capacity to create those opportunities for our learners. So this for us is exciting because we've often had to think about our work through the lens of scarcity. How can we spread this dollar as far as we can spread it? And no one is more masterful at that than Beth O'Brien, and the way her brain thinks in like the fractional pieces, because she has had to be able to navigate having pieces of people do different portions of jobs, and it's going to take a shift in our thinking to think about what are some of those opportunities that are out there for our students that would really help to better prepare them for different outcomes when they leave us. So it's hard to grasp, but for us it's also exciting to consider what we're going to be able to offer to our students.
Yeah, for sure. Courtney, apologies if I missed this, but Morgan, is this something that do we have access to that?
You don't yet, but I can certainly share with you. I do bring it to every meeting, and I develop it, so I just want to go through and make sure I don't have any snarky comments in it before. Right.
Yeah, I'd love to dig in a little bit more.
Okay, Morgan, I got one question for you on the monthly report. What's the difference between the building improvements, the 4,700, and the maintenance of buildings, 2,620?
So there are sort of 3 things there, and we are using them probably for the first time this year. And so the 2,610, in theory, is sort of buying window cleaner and toilet paper, the real, specifically just what it takes to maintain the buildings. 2,620 is for repairs, so we need to maybe do some maybe a boiler replacement, or you're fixing the floors like we did down here. And then the 4,700 is where we tend to park the bigger projects. So building projects, the sugar houses in that
Right, in the
same
big ones.
area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? That's it.
I have one other, but I want to make sure there are no other questions on the budget presentation.
No.
Okay, so I'm going to do a quick share again, if I can find the Zoom meeting again. Vern went out to bid, to request plowing bids for all the schools, primarily because he wanted to get bids for salt rather than sand, to make, I gather, to make it easier for the cleanup in the spring. And then also get bids for clearing sidewalks. He's having trouble, and the principals can probably back it up, finding folks to staff our custodial positions. So he's trying to figure out ways where you can take a chunk of work and kind of move it off of their plate so they can really be focused on being in the buildings. The bids came back a little bit all over the place, but I wanted to put these up here and sort of get the sense from the principals and from the board on where to go. What I did was to try to compare like to like. I lumped them into basically the two towns, and most of the contractors bid on a group of schools rather than saying, you know, this one for that, because somebody is coming to Enosburg Elementary, they're not going to do just Enosburg Elementary, they're going to want to do both. And so for the Cold Hollow, Enosburg Elementary, Enosburg High School side, we had 3 bids. Goodhue is your current provider and is pretty clearly the low bid on that.
Or could you make that a little bigger? Yes,
I'm with you on that.
there we go.
There we go.
Okay, so up first is the 3 buildings on the Enosburg campus. So Goodhue bid 27,000, and then Combs 42.5, and what was 40?
What's that in comparison with last year's bids? Do you know on top of your head?
I don't. I think it's pretty comparable because it's Goodhue, and so I think the only increase has been on the cost of salt over snow. And then 3 bids again for the 2 Richford schools. The town is your current provider. Goodhue at 24.5, so 2,000 less. And then Holmes, who does bid every year, but significantly higher there as well. The town bid does include salt, but they said that they're not able to do the sidewalks. So there's a little bit of a difference there. We still need staff doing that. And so I think for the 3 Enosburg schools, that's a pretty significant difference and a pretty easy argument to go with your current provider. Kind of wanted to bring the 2 Richford ones because they are close. That again, the bids are a little bit different in terms of the scope. I wanted to give the principals a chance to weigh in, board members a chance to weigh in. I didn't bring Vern to this meeting because we were just pulling this together today.
How about the principals? Anything on the principals?
Well, I know that, just speaking for the elementary, obviously, the sidewalks have been an issue for our custodial staff. I know one of our custodians got hurt severely last year on his back. He was out for quite some time. So that has been an issue for us. I don't know if there's an issue up here.
Were they supposed to do the sidewalks in the past?
John has.
Or was that in addition?
John has done sidewalks.
We added it in the bids to the contractors. It has always,
This year?
for these bids that went out.
Just
no.
for these bids,
Yeah.
but not,
Yeah,
so
the-
they're added in for all of them, but in the past, they
So
weren't
last
part
year
of the
was
bid.
our staff that did it.
Great, okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
I always feel like if the town bids, we should go with the town because it's all money coming out of the same pocket. But like Lynn says, Beth O'Brien was raised in the frugal school of finance, and I spend the money like it's my own personal money. And to me, you help the school, you help the town, you help the town, you help the school. And so if the town bids, I feel like we should go with the town. And they've done a good job for us, I think. I mean, they haven't done the sidewalks, but they haven't been asked to do the sidewalks in the past. So if all the bids are comparable, then I would think they would all be.
But they're not doing the sidewalks.
They've said they won't do the sidewalks.
Oh, they said they won't. I didn't
So
hear that.
now it still
I
needs to
didn't
be our
know.
staff.
So I know for the elementary school, that becomes an issue. I don't know about the high school.
Well,
I would think that would be a safety issue.
our custodians have done it.
That's what I was gonna say.
I mean, they've been done, but the custodians have done them.
Right. And the custodians, even if the contractor's picking it up, the custodians will have some of that work because if they're coming through in the morning and plowing, there may be a need for midday touch up on the sidewalks. It's just hoping to get the bulk of it out of.
Can I chime in on your question, Mark? So our recently retired head custodian used to do it himself and spent a lot of hours on it, occasionally overtime as well, which meant that other things got neglected during storm times in the winter. And so when Vern looked at our situation, he really encouraged us to have the sidewalks contracted as well.
I mean, to me, it seems like at least for Enosburg, Goodhue, we have Goodhue already, so, why not maintain that relationship? My question would be, especially where Richford is concerned, did Vern have sort of a thought there, Morgan, or preference?
He said he did not have a preference. He's good with either way.
The intention of going out to bid was based on his concerns about staffing levels
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to take that off the plate, Morgan.
Right.
Yeah. My concern with the town, unfortunately, is the sidewalk issue, right? And so then Goodhue, if they're doing Enosburg and they'll do the sidewalks, why not keep it all with one contractor?
Are you looking for a motion today?
I need some guidance.
Okay, some guidance.
I don't think I necessarily need a motion. And if.
How set is the town on not doing the sidewalks?
I don't know, because I haven't talked to Kylie.
Maybe get with them on that and come back. I mean, if they're willing to do the sidewalks, I just would say to the town, if they do the sidewalks.
So do you want to give Morgan an either or? or up to a certain amount, like if they're gonna, because will it be
Or
too late by
somebody-
November?
Or
Yeah,
they could give more to
Oh, that's true.
authority to make the decision away from the table, and then I can get the information and come back to you, or somebody. I'm just anticipating if they say, okay, we'll do the sidewalks, but it's gonna cost this much more, or we're only gonna do this sidewalk. I mean, I don't know what they're gonna say, but
Right.
I just don't wanna be having this discussion in November after we've had 2 snowstorms.
Right, exactly. How do you feel? Cool.
Not 2 snowstorms.
I'm with you,
Make a
Akula.
decision, we will.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeable, like, if we can maintain the relationships that we have with both of them, but I think it's gonna be key for the town to agree to do the sidewalks, and so ultimately, if it's a reasonable increase for the town, if they're saying, we'll do it, but more money, I think, let's go with that, and then otherwise, as a second option, go with Goodhue, my thought.
Same.
Is there a salt, like all of this, is there a difference between, does all of this include salt or sand or the shift or?
This column all includes salt. There were a couple that also did sand.
So sand only, and salt is salt and sand, or is salt? I'm just curious.
I understood that.
You did?
Yeah, I did too.
High five, Kelly, thank you.
I'll be sure to get
Border
back to you on
range of
that.
Vermont.
Okay, good.
What do you guys want to do? You guys-
I'm fine with
Not
giving
giving
the
a
authority.
decision. Okay.
Yep,
Sarah?
yep.
Okay. Devin, you have anything to add?
I kind of agree with more, and I agree with Beth, and I agree. Well, I think I don't know. I'm multi-thinking here. My ADHD mind is going nuts. I do think we should be going with the town if we can support the town, but I think the town should also be supporting us in doing the sidewalks. So I really would go with if they can't do the sidewalks at all, I'd go with Goodhue. But I'd definitely give the bid to the town as long as they're willing to do the sidewalks, I guess is my thought.
Okay. Thank you.
So I will reach out to the town tomorrow, and then I will cycle back with
Yep.
you for sure. And that's all I've got.
Wait, so Enosburg is going with Goodhue?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to, you have anything else, Morgan? Is that it?
That's all I have.
Okay. Superintendent's report.
So I'll start off with personnel. Courtney's going to share my slideshow. So we have, the first section is hiring, and we do have one action on hiring, and that is Amy Schwanier as a pre-K teacher at Enosburg Elementary School. So I would ask for the board to make a motion to approve hiring Amy Schwanier.
Okay.
Make the motion.
Okay, Sarah's made the motion. Devin?
Aye.
Cool.
Aye.
And I'm an aye.
Perfect. The rest is informational. Do you want me to go over any of that more, or
No,
any of the
also.
open positions or anything?
No,
Okay.
also.
All right, so in terms of, well, I'm going to have to come back to one unless it's in there. So I have to jump back to an email because I forgot to put that in there. The administrator negotiations, I'm gonna give that to you in just a little bit. So there is one personnel leave request that we have, and that is from Katie Glidden, who's the new school nurse here at the high school. Katie is going to have a baby. Her due date is November 27th. She has not been here long enough to qualify for FMLA, so some portion of her her leave. She hasn't been here long enough to accrue substantial enough leave bank either. So some portion of her leave will need to be unpaid. So the request to the board is, will you grant Katie the ability to be out? Her intention is to be out for 8 weeks and then return. A Hardy, previous school nurse for Richford Junior Senior High School, will fill in while she's away. So the request is around approving the unpaid leave.
I'll make the motion.
Motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Sarah's made the motion. Devin?
Aye.
Go
Aye.
I'm an aye.
Great.
So question about that, are there state regulations and rules around maternity leave? And how many weeks is that typically? Just
So
remind
she
me.
could take up to 12, Morgan, if it's unpaid.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
So she's requesting under what she could request. But there's nothing in the state regulations that requires the compensation piece.
Gotcha.
Right.
But since she's asking for unpaid, ultimately
Yeah.
we would have to give it.
Yes. And then next, I'm gonna have to look at my computer because I have no shot of reading that screen. Okay. We have nothing under student. We do have, except some really cool pictures. Courtney does a nice job of bringing in some pictures to show us what's been happening around FNESU. You know, there was a really cool benefit soccer game that happened yesterday between Enosburg and Richford in support of Ryan Snyder, who was recently diagnosed with, or RHS alumni, who was recently diagnosed with cancer. So there was a great article in the Messenger today about that game.
And they raised over $2,000. They
Nice.
raised, I think, about 2,200. And the girls for the A&B
Yeah.
Foundation for Suicide Awareness raised over $2,000 too.
That's fantastic. And both of these, I just want to say it again, I know Beth said it in September, both of these were student initiated.
Yeah.
So this wasn't driven by any adults in our school community, and it's another example of how amazing our students are and how powerful they can be when they set their mind to doing something for their community. So we have our class size reports. So we'll start with the Enosburg Elementary, Richford Elementary class size comparisons. So as per policy, we have to take a look at these every year, sometime in October. So we have a minimum class size that's established by policy. And so each building principal goes through and takes a look at what their sizes are in each of these categories. So it's by content for K through 2, 3 through 5. It's a little different for 6 through 8, but it doesn't apply here. So we've got no classes that are below your minimum average threshold. Are there any questions on any of that data? Okay. Could you go to the next one, Courtney?
I did.
You did. Okay. So Richford High School, and I'm going to go to my own, I can't see that. So these are the middle schools at both Enosburg and Richford. So you'll see that they've broken this out by total in each of the grade levels, but then also looking at it per section. So we're a little closer to what that minimum threshold is, but still above it in Richford, and you are above it in Enosburg as well. And then there are, and I will send you a link to this slideshow so you can review in more detail. So there are several links on this next page. I think it might make sense. Let's just open that first link, Courtney.
The individual one?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Richford High School. I'm just going to show you how it's structured so you can take a look. You can either choose to take time taking a look at it now, or I can send it to you. You all have computers, so you can look at it that way too. So the way the class size report goes is that the building principals take all of their teachers and take a look at all of the courses that they're teaching, and they give you the average number of students in each of those courses. So you have that data both from Richford and the next bullet is from Enosburg, and then there's a side-by-side data point. I'm sorry, then you have Cold Hollow's class size report in the chart, and then you have a side-by-side comparison between Richford and Enosburg. And I know this is something that Courtney works on each year to try to get the data in a format that makes sense. So looking at what the class sizes are for like courses, not all the courses match up between the two schools in that report. Could you go to the next one, Courtney?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. So, for example, math extension is something that is offered at Enosburg but not at Richford, and business math is something that's offered at Richford but not at Enosburg. So you'll see that there are some places where you don't have comparison data in there, and this is certainly something that, you know, once we merged and we started to have conversations at the board level about thinking about how we're utilizing our human resources, especially with some of the shifts we've made around personalizing opportunities and more kids accessing flexible pathways and having more kids who are doing like extended learning opportunities. Some of our teachers are needing to be freed up to do some of that advising, and so we've asked principals to really take a look at the class size of the courses that they're offering. Another goal of the board when we were merging was to look at, are there opportunities for us to think about how we could share some human resources, and we've done that in a couple of ways. We've done that by teachers actually traveling between the two schools. We've had some cases where students from one school go to the other school for a portion, like the course that you highlighted today. We have some Enosburg students that come to that course. We don't have any this year.
No, we've offered it, but it's there's some glitches, and kids really want to take classes in their own school.
Yeah.
It's more,
And don't want to sit on Zooms. We talked
Yeah,
about that
we've
too.
tried to get kids like to participate hybrid. I mean, we're working on it. It works best when we have the teachers travel.
We'll
That's
try to
what we've
continue to
noticed.
look at it, and I think that we'll continue to have to look at whether or not there are ways for us to be able to, I'm sure there's a solvable problem that we
Well,
could
like,
figure
for
out with it.
example, I'll give you an example. There's an Enosburg student who would like to take our ag science class. That's in the morning. And if he came, and even if he stayed for the morning, there's really no way for him to get back to Enosburg until the afternoon Cold Hollow bus goes, which means he'd miss his advisory and his lunch in Enosburg. And so,
convention.
but we could definitely get him here in the morning.
Right.
But, so Matt and I have really been talking about this, like what are the barriers and how can we overcome some of those barriers? And like, I think that maybe there would have been some kids who took our Project Lead the Way class, but I wrote that grant in August. I didn't really know that it was an option. I thought it was gonna be cost prohibitive, but when I started talking to the representative and I wrote the grant, I pulled it off for this year. I didn't know I was gonna be able to. So next year, we know that's gonna be an option. Maybe there'll be some Enosburg kids that
Right.
wanna come for that.
And then vice versa, if there
Right.
are ways for us to look
Right.
at that as an option for Enosburg for another portion of the day or another type of course.
Actually, that course has a remote option that I just learned about. So the Enosburg kids might be able to, they can't now because the classes are pretty prescribed in the curriculum. And we can't even, a kid moves in who wanted to take it and that happened, they can't because the curriculum's too far along. But next year, I think they could take that class through us remotely. If they
This
want
kid
to.
wouldn't have taken
Yeah.
it, you know, that's.
I'm just
yeah,
saying
yeah.
there's options.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm just curious on, when you have the teachers go from one school to the next, what's that doing for your retention with those teachers?
There's an issue.
Right.
They don't
There's
love
an
it.
issue.
Which
They
is not an
like
issue
to
we
stay in a building.
I don't think we've done that many times. I mean, we've shared resources in the past, pre-merger, but we did try to do it with a math teacher.
And she
who-
was fine. Lisa Besso said she really enjoyed the way we set up the schedule,
She
being
actually
able to
did,
go to
yeah,
both.
she said that.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Lisa Besso would definitely do it. I think it depends on the person.
So another factor that we have to look at is we also have other opportunities for kids. So it's not always a preferred structure, but we do have something called courseware. So we're able to think about how if we have a course where there are only 2 kids that want to take physics, by way of example, we could still give them the opportunity, but we might not want to have our in-person teacher being the one who is teaching a whole block of physics to 2 kids when we could take that same physics teacher and have that person be available to do some advising for kids in science who are accessing remote opportunities. So those are conversations that we're going to need to continue to have between the 2 schools because it'll be cost prohibitive for us to like expand those flexible options with students, and they're growing, it feels like, all the time. More and more kids are wanting to have a say in how they're engaging in their learning. So I think that we will need to continue to think about redesigning some of the ways in which our teachers are teaching, and that will require us to get creative with what's our threshold for offering a course. We've got to have a sense of when it makes sense to run it and when it doesn't, but still give the kids another way that they can access the content that they're seeking. So that's something we definitely will need to continue to look at. I think that was the last one there, Courtney, correct? Okay, so if you go to the next one, is there a way to make that bigger? It feels like in this library we're quite far away from that board. So these are the raw numbers that Morgan shared with you. So he did it over a 5-year period. I did your October 1 numbers from October 22 to October 23, and so you can see that for some reason on this chart, we don't have the change for Cold Hollow. I can get that to you.
I can tell you why.
Okay.
When I had asked about how many 10th graders they had and what their enrollment was for last year, they did not have internet, and they weren't getting it back until right before the meeting. Oh.
Hello, Devin.
Hello. We didn't lose internet, but Cold Hollow didn't have internet all afternoon.
Yeah.
Today?
We all lost it.
Okay.
So they couldn't give us.
Yeah,
So
the
what-
professional learning was fun this afternoon with no
Yeah.
internet.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So that's why we don't have the numbers. 'Cause I
Okay.
couldn't get high.
Okay, so we'll get that too. Once we get that number filled in, I'll have you CC this report.
Can you send this to us?
Board.
I actually have already linked this slideshow into the board packet.
Okay.
But we'll put that number in tomorrow.
Yeah, as soon as I get it, I will.
So we saw an increase at Enosburg Elementary from last year to this year of plus 25 students. At Enosburg Middle High School, plus 31. Richford Elementary, we saw a decrease of 9. Richford Junior Senior High School, a decrease of 14, for a total of plus 33 across the district from last year until this year.
That's it.
And that is it for my report. And while you're finishing up, I'm going to find the administrator negotiation data that I couldn't put my fingers on.
So,
Yeah.
for those enrollment numbers, do you have any insights in terms of those increases and decreases? I know that's far-fetched. Where they're moving, or, they're moving out of the community or from between districts?
We've got some movement between districts, certainly not that level of numbers. I don't
think
really.
at Richford High School, now that I've been here for 9 years, we had Enosburg and Richford had the same size graduating class last year. That's never happened. And so we had an abnormally big senior class last year, and the number coming in from 6th grade wasn't that big. So I think that accounts for our difference. Like, our normal graduating class size average is 35 to 40, and we graduated 53 kids last year. And so that, I think, would account for our biggest difference. Our 6th grade is abnormally small. They were supposed to be 12 our 7th grade, they were supposed to be 12 when they came up from Richford Elementary School. They went up to 25 because of move-ins last year. So the class went from 12 leaving 5th grade to 25 or 26 in 6th grade, and back down to 18. So it's an incredibly transient class. So I think that I could explain why our numbers have kind of done this.
That part doesn't make as much sense for Enosburg though. For last year, we're having the small graduating class, but to still end up with plus 31. So I don't have
We
any
have 2
insight.
small graduating classes in a row, and so we graduated around 55, and we had about 80 freshmen come in, and then
Which is more normal for them.
so more of our normal size. And then our senior class has barely 50, and so, which is again abnormal. Which is, when you look at some of the numbers, I really wonder in terms of some of the Cold Hollow numbers and some of our more advanced classes, if that, I'm really going to be interested to look and see if those numbers change next year when we have a more typical size senior class, or we'll see, But I think this is the smallest senior class in years. Right now it's around 51 or 49. And every other class is in the mid-70s to mid-80s.
Another thing I'll point out is that our music numbers are really low at the high school level and not at the middle school. And I think that they're creeping up at the middle school. She's really growing the program in 6, 7, and 8. But those kids couldn't sing, or the kids currently in high school couldn't sing or play an instrument for 3 years during COVID.
Yeah.
And so our music programs across the state really took a beating. And so those numbers are small. We're trying to regrow them. And I think it's promising if you look at the middle school numbers, I think they are going to grow.
Either of you have insights?
I agree entirely with Beth. Our kids just had no real opportunity for music. Like when you're talking about music, and then when I think about kids coming in and out, we get a number of families from Cambridge this year. Families that literally lost their homes. But we also have a very transient population.
Here in Richford.
Yes. Yep. Families that we've had a number of families that have moved in and actually purchased homes this year, which is more unusual. It's usually finding
The rentals, right?
rentals.
Yeah.
But we've actually had some families that have purchased homes. Yeah, it's a transient population.
And,
It really is.
at Enosburg, it's typical the past couple years I've been there that I think you said 9 kids. So that's typical what I've been seeing since I've been there.
Okay.
We see a lot of movement within the year, like within the school year. Families coming in.
So Enosburg, you're saying elementary school, you're seeing an addition of about 9 kids per year, so it's just growing
Yeah.
generally. Okay.
Our 4th grade this year is at 23 kids per class, and we're having somebody move in next week, so.
You're up 25 from last October to this year.
Oh, we're at 25.
25.
We had a big increase this year.
I think ours tend to stay about the same. I'm not even sure what I know currently in Mark. We just had a family join us today.
199, no,
Yeah.
190
190,
from
and
October
it's
1.
usually right around 190, 195. I think we lost like 30 students. We got about 30 students. And that number feels huge to me on both sides, but it always sort of evens out. Since I've been there, with the exception of the phase 2s of COVID, it's been in the 90s.
That's helpful, thank you.
I have your negotiations
Oh, you do?
update.
Okay.
So the only administrators that we will not be negotiating with this year are Nate, Robert Fair, and Beth. Everyone else is up for negotiations. So you have Matt, Kelly, Jen, Heather, Lori. I think that's it. Julie, yes.
Oh, she's up in
Anything else?
No.
Okay, principal's report, Kelly?
All information.
Okay, Beth?
I just have one additional thing that came to me from Todd Marlowe and KD and Jouer. They'd like to propose a travel experience for students during the spring of 2024 to Costa Rica. The travel dates would coincide with the spring vacation and travel dates before and after the break. The trip would provide travelers with an experience of a lifetime where they would experience the food, language, and people / culture of beautiful Costa Rica. The trip would provide students with opportunities for ecological service learning projects, including work with sea turtles. Students would have the opportunity to go to a local elementary school and visit wildlife centers, national parks, and experience the local Bree indigenous community. No trip is complete without fun and adventure, and our students would get to experience whitewater rafting, zip lining, and playing soccer with the local people. I have included an itinerary. I don't know if they gave it to me. It might be on my desk. They would stay in small hotels and project dorms, which are much like rustic summer cabins. The final cost would be about $3,300 to $3,600, all inclusive. The final price would reflect actual flight costs and the number of travelers. They held a meeting to gauge interest, and it appears that they have enough students interested in going. Students would have the opportunity to fundraise, but there is an expectation that travelers would have the ability to pay their own travel fees. Their next step is to seek board approval before opening up travel enrollment.
Okay.
Todd has done this trip before,
Yeah,
before
that's right.
I was principal here.
Okay. That was gonna be my
Yeah,
question.
yeah, before, yeah. Any other discussion on that?
What grade? High school.
High school.
Is this like the last one? Is it across both schools?
Well, it could be probably. I'm sure Todd wouldn't say no to that. Last time it was a teacher who was in both schools, and they did it across both schools. So I'm sure that if there were kids interested from Enosburg, that Todd would not say no to that. The expectation is that they'd fundraise and come to the meetings and, yeah.
Do you need a motion for that?
It would be good, yeah.
Entertain a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, who's made the motion? Devin?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
I'm an aye. That's it?
That's all I have.
Okay.
Sorry, yes.
All
Do
right.
you need a chaperone?
I was thinking I'd like to go, but.
I was gonna meet you afterwards.
Okay, Jen?
All informational, I just want to mention, today happened to be a SIP team meeting day, and even though the technology wasn't there, our internet was down, they just worked so hard, and we're really finding that this team time is really getting things done. And so we really appreciate the idea. I think came from Lynn, but it's making a difference, so that's great. And I feel as a leader a little bit less stressed of having to solve everything. So
That's good to hear.
You mean with this Tuesday?
Tuesdays, yes.
Well,
Afternoons
I
or
think
the-
she's talking about the sit team structure, but
Yeah.
within the Tuesday afternoons, it allows her to have that time.
Right. And today, we don't every week at the Tuesday time, but it just happened, this was our week to have sit teams, so.
Okay. Nice.
Matt?
So Julie Cattell had her baby, which is
Mhm.
wonderful, Zoe, and she's doing great, and so is her mom, so that's really cool. We have Lisa DeLon covering. She was at Sheldon as well as Enosburg and other places before she retired. It's lovely to have her at the school. And middle school did have a trip. They all went to Underhill State Park, I think, last Friday as a sort of, connection trip. In terms of the high school, there's one thing that isn't on the agenda, which is we have the opportunity, I will also check my email just to say, next Tuesday, the National Guard has offered our JROTC program to bring a Black Hawk helicopter to Enosburg Falls High School, land on our fields, and they would like to give JROTC students the opportunity to take 15-minute helicopter rides. I've spoken to Lynn and Morgan about it, and given that there is liability and we would need to get the right forms, permission forms signed off, we did want to bring it to the board to find out if that's something that you all would support.
So it's something we kind of always ask our insurance company, and they don't love us putting kids, that high above the earth. But it's something that not a lot of kids get that experience to see that kind of high tech piece of equipment, or even to fly. So I think that this is an appropriate piece to put in the hands of the board. We would work to get a liability form, but we know how liability forms go. There's still the liability lies with the district.
So this would be just for ROTC students?
JROTC students, yep.
Okay.
I don't know if they would all go up. There's a little more than 40 of them. They will get to check out the helicopter and see technical aspects of it as well. I mean, if you said no, there would be things for them to do, but obviously they're all excited at the possibility of going up.
I make a motion, let them go. There you go.
You made a motion,
She
yes?
did.
Sarah?
Aye.
Cool.
I love the idea. I don't know if I have to abstain though, because my son is one of those students, so, and he definitely wants to go.
Right. I'm definitely aye. I think that's a good idea.
I don't think you can abstain today.
No.
Oh, okay.
Right? We don't have.
that for
Yeah,
it.
you can stay.
You can? Okay. I'm just thinking we have a quorum for the meeting. I guess that doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay.
If it's,
Makes
if I
sense.
can vote, then it's an aye for sure.
No, I think it's a
Great,
wonderful
thank
idea.
you. They'll be
And-
really excited.
Anything else, Matt?
Nope, that's it.
Which day is that going to happen?
Tuesday with a rain date of next Thursday or Friday.
And you're going to make sure there's lots of pictures that you can share, and Courtney will be on it, right?
Well, I'm gonna be across the country on Tuesday.
Oh, you
So
are?
if there's a rain date Thursday, I'll be back.
A rain date, okay, yeah. No, that's gonna be really fun.
I could always come and take pictures.
That would be lovely too.
She wants to sneak onto the helicopter and on the plane to Costa Rica.
Did you get on the board of Kua so that you can travel more?
No, but the thing is, unless I am officially there, because Matt asked me to be there, Kai's gonna be like, no, you can't come, you're not allowed, he's in high school,
Oh.
so.
Well, cool, I really need you to come take photos.
I will do it.
You can bring Daniel and he can say things like that.
Perfect.
Okay, Nate's not here. I think this is informational anyways. Okay, so that's gonna bring me back to, board reorganization. So we have, one seat that's open still, and we have a candidate that's willing to sit in that seat. Rachel, why don't you come out to the table right here? Rachel, are you still a member of the school with NCSS? Or
Yes, I
you
am.
are?
I am on the school-based autism team. I have talked to my team lead about this, and it's okay. But yeah, I'm Rachel. I've lived in Enosburg for 7, almost 8 years. I have 4 kids, one in preschool, one in elementary school, one in middle school, and one in high school. So I'm kind of all over. I've had the pleasure of working in Richford. My client that I worked with was here, so I really got to know Richford, and I really fell in love with the school a lot. My son runs cross country here because Enosburg didn't have a big enough enrollment, so I'm kind of like in both of the schools. With my position at my job, I kind of get to be in the other schools too, so it's really interesting to me because I take a lot of pride in this community. I grew up in Swanton, I went to MBU, and I didn't really know much about Enosburg and Richford, and I just really fell in love with it. Again, I take a lot of pride in our small town, and I get to kind of see that in all of the schools, because we're anywhere from BFA, Georgia, SATEC, MVU, Highgate, Swanton, and up here, and I will always prefer to be up north. I'm a little biased, but I've really just come to enjoy it. I had Kim Maraldi at the high school reach out to me, and I've always been interested in education. I went to school to be a teacher, and then COVID happened, and I kind of had to put that on the back burner for a bit. So now I'm a BT at NCSS, and I love working with kids. But even just hearing, like, I'm kind of glad I got to sit through a little bit of the meeting and hear what you guys are talking about. My daughter was on that middle school trip. My son's teacher is Amy Schwanier. You know, I do know a lot of the kids in the JROTC program, so it's really cool to kind of see, like, the back work and how all this works, and I would be honored to be able to kind of help and guide and be a part of it.
So are you assigned to an FNESU school now?
I am a senior BI, so I can be anywhere at any point. Like,
Okay.
and so I'm not set with one client. I'm from any, like, it's different every day. Right now I'm out on medical leave. I'm going back though Monday. So again, I could really be anywhere.
So when a few years ago though, you were assigned to a
Yes.
student in
Yep.
the building
In
when
here.
Taps was here, but
Yes.
she changed positions.
Yeah, I took a
since then.
different position,
Yeah.
so I'm kind of all over. I float, I train, that kind of thing.
So that like being directly assigned is a little bit tricky because
Yeah.
you're not technically supposed to work within the same district that you're a board member
Okay.
in. So it is, that part is a little bit tricky, but if it's not something that you would be assigned
No, I
every
wouldn't.
day
It-
to a
it-
client within the system, we have made it work with, like, if people are doing some contracting in and out, but not like
Okay.
permanently assigned.
No, I'm not. I would float. There's a chance, like, if we had a staff member go on maternity leave, I would be like with a client for a certain amount of time. But again, it's not set. I'm not there all the time. And I mean, I don't know how that works here, but I have no issue too, like with stuff like that, like stepping out. I don't know if.
I mean, we have other situations, because we have some board members and other, I guess no one on this district board, but that like to work in the after-school program, and we struggle to hire for the after-school program. So I write a waiver to the Secretary of Education to just get permission for them to do it just for the duration of that year. So if you did get assigned here, we could explore that waiver piece, to just make sure that there's no conflict of interest or anything like that.
Okay. All right, any questions? Sarah? Cool. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Cool's made the motion. All in favor for Rachel to be the new board member?
Aye.
Devin's an aye. I'm an aye. Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Rachel.
Now, you can't vote or anything until you actually go.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, I was ready to be. And I started out at Enosburg, it was my daughter's last game. I'm like, man, it's really dark in there. And I like rechecked my email. I'm like, okay. I'll get there. I'm busy, but I promise when I take on something, I will do everything I can.
We've decided to
Yeah.
make it extra confusing this year, so we are spending time in each of our schools.
That's fine. I'm very familiar with all the schools.
Good.
I will say that. I didn't know where the library was, so.
We're at EFHS in November, so
Awesome.
If it makes you feel any better, I almost did that, and it was last month or the month before, and found the dark library too.
Yeah.
That's right.
Everybody else.
Okay, next we have,
At least you went to the right board meeting.
True.
Oh yeah, you went
Just
to
saying.
Oh, that's right.
you want-
That's you.
Just came in to say hi.
That's just visiting.
Okay,
That's right.
we have
I
a,
was just visiting.
Right.
we have a opening position for FNESU board member. Anyone interested? Because if not, I would like to nominate Akua.
That works, I am interested. So.
Okay. Anyone else?
No.
Okay. Okay.
You showed up there last month. I thought you were interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm an aye. Okay. And then the last one's
Before
the,
you go to that one, can I just say something about
Yes.
the policy?
yes.
So we had the NMV meeting last week, and you're both in this situation where you have an open member for policy. When we merged, we chose to send 2 board members to be representatives on the policy committee. The other district is having a hard time finding a second person. And it doesn't necessarily sound like people were extremely eager on this side either. I know Elijah said that he would be willing. What they're wondering is, what if we had one board member and then someone who was willing to be an alternate? So if that board member couldn't go, they could call the alternate and say, hey, can't go this month, can you step in? Rather than having 2 that are planning to go each time. So I told them I would float this by this board, and then we don't think we need to do anything other than just make the shift. So they have technically already done that. They're going to have one board member, and then they have a backup, and then they have a backup for the backup on that side.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think
Okay.
that's a good plan.
So, Elijah's already said that he would wants to be on it if everyone's okay with that. He's okay with that one.
So
Okay.
is it you that
I'm not.
I'm on it.
you're on
Yes.
it?
Yeah.
So it would still be you, but then Elijah would be your backup?
This would be the second.
No, Elijah would be our second.
So that's what NMV is. They're not going to have a
Oh, I
second.
don't have a second.
They're going to have one,
Oh.
and then they'll
Okay.
have a backup for the one. So
So Elijah would be the backup for you.
Yeah, Elijah would be the backup. Okay.
Right?
does that work? Yeah.
That work? Okay. Okay, and that's it for board business. Anybody have anything else for board business?
Courtney, maybe you can send all board policy documents to policy committee and the backups.
I think I'm a little confused. Who is the primary?
More,
And then Elijah's going to be the
the
backup.
backup, yes.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Anybody have anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Sarah's made the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.